Harper woke to the gentle rhythm of the wind tapping against the bedroom window, a soft, soothing sound that resembled a faraway lullaby. She opened her eyes slowly, allowing the silence to settle around her like a blanket. The other side of the bed was untouched, no impression on the pillow, no trace of warmth, only a cold, empty space where love had once rested. Her fingers reached out instinctively, brushing against the chilled sheet where Cole's body no longer lay. 2 days. It had only been 2 days since he left, suitcase half-filled, expression unreadable, somewhere between sorrow and surrender. He hadn't told her where he was headed, and she hadn't asked. Not because she didn't care, but because the pain in her chest already felt unbearable. Any more truth would only deepen the wound. The house remained still. Not a peaceful quiet, but an eerie, hollow silence that magnified the emptiness around her. Once, their home had been alive with laughter, late-night conversations, and whispered dreams shared in the dark. Now it echoed with memories, familiar yet out of reach, like scenes from a life that no longer belonged to her. Time had become meaningless. The numbers on the bedside clock blurred together, irrelevant. Eventually, Harper forced herself out of bed. Each movement was sluggish, weighed down by invisible grief. In the kitchen, the coffee maker stood idle and untouched, a lifeless symbol of their routine. Out of habit, she brewed a cup, not for the caffeine, but to keep herself in motion. Her thoughts drifted, uninvited, to the beginning, to the first time she saw Cole in that bustling university cafe. He was quiet, slightly awkward, and endearingly persistent. Day after day, he'd come in, pretending not to look her way while clearly hoping for a moment of connection. She'd found it charming. Their first date had been nothing extravagant, just a walk through a local park. His hand in hers, damp with nerves, was honest in a way words couldn't be. It had felt right. They had been full of dreams back then, so certain that love, pure and strong, could survive anything. Their marriage had once felt like the most vibrant chapter of their lives. Cole had always been the dreamer, the spontaneous one, who could turn even mundane moments into magic. Harper had been the anchor, the structured planner who kept them grounded. Together, they'd found a balance that worked. Not perfect, but real. Arguments were rare in the beginning, quickly resolved and never deep. But slowly, cracks began to appear. Missed bills, neglected chores, forgotten dinner plans, small grievances that eventually evolved into sharp words, quiet resentment, and long, heavy silences. They stopped finishing conversations. Nights ended with backs turned and hearts closed. The idea of starting a family had breathed life back into their connection, for a while. They'd spend hours imagining names, nursery colors, and tiny hands that resembled their own. That shared hope kept them going. But with each passing month, test after test came back the same, negative. Harper tried to remain hopeful, but each result chipped away at her. Cole, ever optimistic, told her not to worry. There's still time, he'd say. But to Harper, those words felt like empty comforts. He couldn't understand the quiet mourning growing inside her. And then came the final blow, a diagnosis that confirmed her fears. Her body wouldn't be able to carry a child. She felt defective, like something precious had been stolen from both of them. Cole had immediately suggested adoption, treatments, anything to hold on to their dream. He was kind, supportive. But Harper couldn't look him in the eyes without feeling like she'd failed him. How could she deny him the chance to be a father? So she began to pull away. Bit by bit, she built emotional walls too high for him to climb. She stopped making plans, stopped reaching for his hand, and distanced herself from the life they had built together. Cole tried to be patient. He waited. He hoped. But even patience wears thin. You have to talk to me, he pleaded one evening, finding her motionless on the couch, her eyes fixed on a silent screen. Talk about what? She snapped back, voice sharp from weeks of swallowed grief. About how I feel broken every time I look at you? About how I've ruined our future? I chose you, he said softly, voice trembling. I'm still choosing you. "I didn't choose to be like this," she whispered, barely audible, more to herself than him. Their arguments changed after that. No longer about the real pain, they fought over unwashed dishes, cereal boxes left open, missed birthdays. Surface-level things that masked the deeper wound. And then, one day, Cole simply stopped fighting. No yelling. No slammed doors. Just silence. A silence that struck harder than any argument. That was when Harper knew. The end hadn't come with an explosion, but with a quiet, final drift apart. Two people who once shared everything now moved through the same space as strangers. Now, she sat at the kitchen table, staring at a white envelope stiff with formality. The name of a law firm stared back at her, cold, detached, final. Today, they would sign the divorce papers. Today would mark the official end of their 10-year marriage. When she walked into the lawyer's office, the air felt unnaturally still. The beige walls and endless legal books made the room feel more like a funeral parlor than a place for paperwork. Cole sat across from her, dressed in a crisp shirt, his face a mixture of pain, regret, and something else, acceptance. The attorney, an older man with thinning gray hair and a tired tone, read the agreement aloud without emotion, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Harper gripped the pen tightly, her fingers aching. But her heart ached more. Then, she looked up. Cole was watching her, not with anger, not with resentment, but with something far deeper. Something she couldn't name, but it pierced straight through her. A surge of emotion crashed over Harper like a tidal wave, the weight of everything she hadn't said pressing against her chest. Just as her pen hovered above the page, ready to bring an end to 10 years of shared life, Cole's voice cut through the stillness. "Don't," he said quietly but firmly. "Don't sign it." The air froze. Harper's breath hitched mid-inhale. "I know," he continued, voice steady, almost gentle. "I know you're sick." The words struck her like a blow to the ribs, knocking the air clean out of her lungs. Her eyes locked onto his, her voice a broken whisper. What did you say?" "I know about the cancer," he repeated, calm and certain. The lawyer looked up from his paperwork, startled and confused, glancing between them as the room shifted under the weight of truth. "You're mistaken," Harper murmured, lowering her gaze to her lap, her voice barely audible and trembling. "No, I'm not," Cole replied. "I went to the apartment this morning. I saw the envelope, the test results." It all came rushing back to her, tucking those papers in the drawer, assuming he wouldn't go looking. But of course, he had. He always came back. Her defenses began to falter. "You really thought I'd let you face this on your own?" His voice cracked with hurt. She tried to respond, but words stumbled and dissolved before they could form. How could she explain the fear? The crushing dread of becoming a burden, of watching their love rot into something pitying, of seeing herself in his eyes and finding obligation instead of affection. "I didn't want you to stay just because you felt sorry for me," she whispered. "I didn't know how to say it, I was afraid." Cole leaned forward, gently wrapping his fingers around hers. His touch, even now, still felt like home. "This is how we ended up here," he said quietly. "Not because we didn't love each other, but because we stopped fighting to keep it alive. But I haven't stopped loving you, Harper. Not even for a second." Tears began to spill, warm and unrelenting down her cheeks. And when she looked up into his eyes, she saw it, something that had been missing for so long. Not just love. But the kind of love that doesn't vanish when things get hard. The kind that stands its ground. That stays even when it hurts. "I don't want to lose you," he whispered, tightening his hold on her hand. Harper opened her mouth, ready to speak, but he gently pressed a finger to her lips. "You don't need to say anything. We'll face this together," he said, "one day at a time." The lawyer quietly closed the folder and returned the papers to his briefcase. No documents signed. No final decisions made. Just two people silently choosing to try again. As they stood to leave, Cole turned to her. Shall we go home? Harper paused, the word home landing differently now. It wasn't a building anymore. It was him, his voice, his hands, his presence. And for the first time in so long, she allowed herself a real smile. Yes, she said softly. They left hand in hand, walking away not only from legal finality but from years of heartache, unspoken pain, and distance. The path ahead was still unknown. Still frightening. But no longer lonely. The months that followed were unforgiving. Hospital visits blurred into each other, chemotherapy drained her body, and dark shadows framed her tired eyes. But through it all, Cole never wavered. He read her poetry on sleepless nights, brought her sunflowers on her worst days, and reminded her with every quiet act that she wasn't alone. And Harper, despite everything, began to feel something stir again inside her. Gratitude. Not for the pain, but for the little things, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of rain, the way Cole still made her laugh when everything else felt bleak. She began to dream again. Not of the children they never had, but of slow mornings, shared cups of coffee, silent walks with fingers intertwined. Of love, lived simply. Then, nearly 2 years after that moment in the lawyer's office, the call came. The cancer was in remission. It wasn't the end of the road, but it was a chance to begin again. That evening, Cole cooked a quiet dinner. Nothing fancy. Just candlelight, a home-cooked meal, and the soft hum of hope. Afterward, he handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate ring, its diamond simple but radiant. I know we're already married, he said, his voice thick with emotion, but I want to do it again. This time, knowing what forever really means, not just in health, but through the sickness too. Harper couldn't speak. She nodded as he slid the ring onto her finger, sealing a vow that had already been lived. Months later, in the garden behind their house, where they had shared countless quiet, golden moments, they stood again, surrounded by loved ones. This time, their vows were no longer just hopeful promises. They were truths they had lived. In sickness and in health, had been tested and proven. And beneath the canopy of blossoms, with the sky wide open above them, they kissed once more. They knew now, love wasn't about fairy tales or flawlessness. It was about choosing one another, again and again, even when walking away seemed easier. The future still held uncertainty. But this time, they would step into it side by side, heart to heart, undaunted. Because the love they shared now wasn't written on paper. It had been shaped in fire, forged by pain, and strengthened by the choice to stay. And that kind of love doesn't break. It endures.